Every single time you lift your hand and brush your fingers through the soft fur of a cat, stroke the warm coat of a dog, or even rest your palm gently on the smooth skin of a small companion animal, you initiate a chain of physical and chemical events in your body so precise, so finely calibrated by human evolution, that most of us experience it every day without ever understanding the science unfolding beneath our skin. This is not some vague emotional comfort, some subjective feeling of calm that we attribute to loving animals. It is a measurable, quantifiable, unnegotiable biological reaction, one that alters the fundamental rhythm of your heart, beat by beat, in real time, governed by the immutable laws of human neurophysiology and biochemistry. Let us start at the smallest, most fundamental level, the place where all human bodily change begins, the sensory receptors embedded in the outermost layer of your skin. Your entire body is covered in millions of specialized nerve endings, but there is a specific subset known as C-tactile afferents, a unique class of sensory fibers that evolution designed for one primary purpose: to detect slow, gentle, pleasant touch. These are not the receptors that sense pain, cold, or sharp pressure. They do not fire when you grip a doorknob, type on a keyboard, or touch a hard surface. They lie dormant, quiet, and unactivated through almost all of your daily mechanical movement, waiting for a very specific stimulus: the slow, light, rhythmic pressure of stroking soft, warm living tissue, the exact sensation you feel when you pet an animal. The moment your fingers make contact with your pet's fur and move at a slow, steady pace, somewhere between 2 and 10 centimeters per second, the C-tactile afferents in your palm and fingertips begin to fire in a synchronized, low-frequency pattern. This is not a random neural burst. It is a calibrated signal tuned perfectly to the texture, temperature, and movement of animal fur. Synthetic fabrics, soft blankets, even human hair cannot replicate this exact stimulation. Animal fur carries a subtle living warmth, a micro-vibration from the creature's steady breathing and heartbeat, and a soft density that triggers these specialized nerve fibers in a way that no inanimate object ever can. Each firing of these C-tactile afferents sends an electrical signal racing up your peripheral nervous system, traveling along myelinated nerve fibers at speeds of up to 120 meters per second, ascending through your spinal cord, and finally reaching two critical regions of your brain: the insular cortex, the region responsible for processing internal bodily states, and the limbic system, the ancient, emotional, and regulatory core that controls your stress response. This single electrical impulse sets off a dual cascade, one that suppresses your body's stress machinery and activates its rest and repair machinery, and every shift in this system directly modulates the speed and regularity of your heart rate. To understand this shift, we must first unpack how your heart rate functions in its default modern state. For most human beings living in industrialized societies, the body exists in a constant state of low-grade sympathetic arousal. Your sympathetic nervous system is your fight-or-flight network, designed to accelerate heart rate, raise blood pressure, tense muscles, and flood the bloodstream with stress hormones to prepare you for threat. In the modern world, this system is almost never fully off. Work deadlines, digital notifications, traffic noise, social pressure, and the constant low hum of mental overstimulation keep your sympathetic nervous system chronically activated. Your resting heart rate hovers slightly higher than your body's ideal baseline. Your heart beats faster, less evenly, expending unnecessary energy with every contraction, even when you are sitting still and physically relaxed. This is the hidden baseline condition of modern human physiology: persistent subclinical tachycardia, a subtle, unrecognized elevation of resting heart rate that erodes cardiovascular health over years, increases systemic inflammation, and disrupts every other bodily rhythm, from sleep to digestion. You do not feel this low-grade stress consciously. Your brain adapts to the elevated heart rate, treating it as normal. But your cells, your blood vessels, your cardiac muscle tissue never adapt. They operate in a constant state of unnecessary exertion, day in and day out. Petting an animal interrupts this chronic sympathetic activation with a biological precision no meditation app, no breathing exercise, no passive relaxation technique can match. The synchronized signal from your C-tactile afferents immediately inhibits the firing of sympathetic neurons in your brainstem. Within the first 3 to 5 seconds of continuous gentle petting, your body begins to shut down the production and release of norepinephrine, the primary neurotransmitter that speeds up your heart rate, constricts your blood vessels, and sustains your stress response. At the exact same time, the neural signal activates your parasympathetic nervous system, often called the rest and digest system, with its primary nerve channel, the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the human body, a massive neural superhighway that runs from the base of your brain down through your neck, chest, and abdomen, regulating the function of every major internal organ, including your heart. When activated by pleasant tactile stimulation, the vagus nerve sends inhibitory electrical signals directly to your sinoatrial node, the natural pacemaker of your heart. Your sinoatrial node is a cluster of specialized cardiac cells that generates the electrical impulses controlling every single heartbeat. Left unregulated by parasympathetic input, it fires faster, producing a higher resting heart rate. But when vagal signals arrive, they slow the depolarization of these pacemaker cells, stretching the interval between each heartbeat, lowering your heart rate incrementally and steadily, and most critically, increasing your heart rate variability. Heart rate variability is one of the most underrated markers of human health and physiological resilience. Most people assume a steady, fixed heart rate is healthy, but the opposite is biologically true. A healthy heart does not beat like a metronome. It beats with subtle, adaptive variability, speeding slightly on inhalation and slowing slightly on exhalation, a flexibility controlled entirely by vagal tone. Chronic stress eliminates this variability, locking your heart into a rigid, fast, unchanging rhythm. Petting an animal restores this vital variability in real time, recalibrating your cardiac pacemaker back to its evolutionary baseline. What makes this mechanism so extraordinary is its automation. You do not have to focus on relaxing. You do not have to practice mindfulness. You do not have to consciously slow your breathing. The biological reaction is involuntary, hardwired into your nervous system through hundreds of thousands of years of human-animal coevolution. Your body recognizes the soft touch of a companion animal as a signal of safety, of low threat, of environmental calm, and it rewires your cardiac rhythm accordingly without any conscious effort from your brain. We can measure this change with clinical precision. Peer-reviewed studies published in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior and the International Journal of Psychophysiology have tracked real-time heart rate fluctuations in human subjects during controlled animal interaction trials. Participants with elevated resting heart rates from chronic stress, anxiety, and occupational burnout showed an average reduction of 8 to 12 beats per minute within just 1 minute of continuous gentle petting of a calm companion animal. Participants with mild hypertension-related cardiac elevation saw reductions of up to 15 beats per minute in short 10-minute interaction sessions. These are not minor fluctuations. A sustained 10-beat reduction in resting heart rate correlates with a 15 to 20% reduction in long-term cardiovascular mortality risk, according to decades of epidemiological data from the Framingham Heart Study. The simple act of touching a living, gentle animal triggers a cardiac adjustment that modern prescription medications often struggle to achieve with consistent reliability. Crucially, this effect is not dependent on emotional attachment alone. Study participants who had no prior experience with pets, who felt no particular fondness for animals, still experienced identical heart rate reductions. The mechanism is sensory and physiological first, emotional second. The feeling of calm we associate with petting animals is not the cause of our slower heart rate. It is the symptom. The biology comes first, and the subjective feeling of peace follows as a consequence of the recalibrated cardiac and neural state. This flips our entire common understanding of pet therapy on its head. We do not feel calm because we love our pets. We feel calm because our nervous systems are biologically programmed to respond to their touch, and that neural response physically slows our heart, resets our stress chemistry, and generates the conscious experience of relaxation. Every stroke of your pet's fur is a non-pharmaceutical neural reset button for your overworked cardiovascular system, operating on a microscopic level of nerve firing and cardiac electrical signaling that most of us will never see or feel directly, but that shapes our physical health every single day. A shifted heart rate is never an isolated physiological event. The human body does not operate as a collection of separate parts, where the heart adjusts its rhythm while every other system remains static. Biology works in cascades and feedback loops, where a single calibrated change in cardiac frequency ripples outward to reshape hormonal balance, vascular tension, respiratory rhythm, muscular tone, and immune function in a continuous, interconnected chain of cause and effect. When petting an animal lowers your resting heart rate and restores your vagal tone, it does not merely make your heart beat slower, it recalibrates the entire operating state of your body, reversing the cumulative damage of chronic stress that defines modern human life. To grasp this full-body transformation, we must first examine the hormonal counterpart to the neural heart rate shift we explored in the first chapter. Every time your parasympathetic nervous system activates and your heart rate stabilizes, your endocrine system initiates a simultaneous chemical reset centered on two opposing molecules: cortisol, the primary chronic stress hormone, and oxytocin, often referred to as the bonding and repair hormone. These two biochemical agents operate in a constant inverse relationship within the human body. When one rises, the other falls, and their balance is directly dictated by your real-time cardiac rhythm. Chronic elevated heart rate, the default state of stressed modern humans, sustains elevated cortisol levels throughout the day. Cortisol is not inherently harmful. It is a vital hormone designed to mobilize energy, sharpen focus, and support survival during acute, short-term threats. The problem arises from chronic, unbroken cortisol elevation, triggered by years of persistent sympathetic arousal and fast, rigid heart rhythm. Sustained high cortisol constricts arterial walls long-term, elevates baseline blood pressure, impairs insulin sensitivity, suppresses immune cell activity, and even alters neural structure in the hippocampus, worsening anxiety and stress reactivity over time. What makes this cycle so insidious is its self-reinforcing nature. High cortisol speeds heart rate, and a fast, erratic heart rate signals the brain to produce more cortisol, locking the body in a perpetual state of physiological defense. Petting a companion animal breaks this self-destructive feedback loop through dual neural and hormonal action. As C-tactile afferent stimulation suppresses sympathetic firing and slows cardiac rhythm, the brain's hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, the central hormonal pathway governing stress response, downregulates cortisol synthesis and release. Clinical psychophysiology studies tracking salivary and serum cortisol levels during human-animal interaction confirm that just 5 minutes of consistent, gentle petting reduces circulating cortisol concentrations by 18 to 25% in adult subjects with moderate to high chronic stress. For context, that is a larger measurable reduction than 20 minutes of guided meditation or structured diaphragmatic breathing in controlled comparative trials. While cortisol declines, oxytocin synthesis surges in the brain's hypothalamus and is released into the bloodstream in significant quantities. Oxytocin is a peptide hormone with profound cardiovascular regulatory properties that most people associate only with social bonding, but its physiological function extends far beyond emotional connection. Oxytocin acts directly on cardiac muscle tissue to reduce myocardial tension, improves endothelial function in blood vessels, and amplifies vagal parasympathetic signaling, further stabilizing heart rate and increasing heart rate variability. Where cortisol keeps the body in a defensive, high-speed cardiac state, oxytocin programs the body for repair, recovery, and physiological equilibrium. This cortisol drop and oxytocin spike creates a new, stable bodily baseline, and the heart rate adjustment we observe is both the result and the anchor of this new equilibrium. It is critical to understand that these changes do not vanish the moment you stop petting your pet. While the immediate neural effects fade within minutes, the hormonal shift creates a residual physiological carryover that sustains lower resting heart rate and reduced stress reactivity for hours after the interaction ends. A morning session of gentle animal contact can keep your cardiac stress baseline lower throughout your workday, reducing the likelihood of stress-induced heart rate spikes triggered by meetings, deadlines, or digital overload. From this hormonal balance flows a complete restructuring of your cardiovascular profile, starting with blood pressure regulation. Many people assume heart rate and blood pressure operate as a single variable, but they are distinct yet deeply interconnected physiological metrics. Chronic fast heart rate forces the heart to contract more frequently with less filling time per beat, increasing mechanical strain on the arterial system and maintaining chronic vascular constriction. When petting slows your heart rate, each cardiac cycle lengthens, allowing the heart's ventricles to fill more completely with blood, generating smoother, more efficient cardiac output. This improved efficiency eliminates the need for arterial constriction to maintain consistent circulation, prompting blood vessels throughout the body to dilate naturally. The result is a measurable reduction in both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, independent of diet, exercise, or medication changes. Epidemiological data collected from longitudinal studies of pet owners published in the American Journal of Hypertension demonstrates that consistent daily animal interaction correlates with a 3 to 5 mmHg lower average systolic blood pressure and 2 to 3 mmHg lower diastolic pressure in adult populations. While these numbers sound small on paper, population-level analysis reveals that a 2 mmHg reduction in average diastolic blood pressure reduces stroke risk by 10% and coronary artery disease risk by 7% across entire populations. The cumulative cardiac benefits of routine pet interaction scale far beyond the momentary calm we feel during contact. Beyond cardiovascular and hormonal change, the stabilized heart rate rewires your respiratory rhythm, creating a cross-system physiological harmony that reduces bodily energy waste. Under sympathetic dominance and elevated heart rate, human breathing becomes shallow, rapid, and thoracic, relying on chest muscle movement rather than full diaphragmatic expansion. This inefficient breathing pattern limits oxygen exchange, increases residual carbon dioxide in the bloodstream, and further sustains nervous system arousal, creating another self-reinforcing stress cycle. A slowed, regulated heart rate automatically entrains slower, deeper, diaphragmatic breathing through neural crosstalk between the cardiac and respiratory centers in the brainstem. This cardiorespiratory synchronization is a core marker of physiological health, known as respiratory sinus arrhythmia, the natural alignment of heart rate fluctuation with breathing cycles. Healthy humans exhibit strong respiratory sinus arrhythmia. Chronically stressed individuals with elevated resting heart rate lose this synchronization entirely. Petting an animal restores this critical alignment in real time, optimizing oxygen and carbon dioxide exchange at the cellular level, reducing physical fatigue and eliminating the subtle, unrecognized bodily tension that accumulates from inefficient respiration throughout the day. Muscular tension, another hidden byproduct of chronic high heart rate and stress, also dissipates as cardiac rhythm stabilizes. Persistent sympathetic arousal keeps skeletal muscle fibers in a state of low-grade contraction, particularly in the neck, shoulders, upper back, and jaw. This chronic muscular tightness is not voluntary. It is a reflexive physiological response to sustained fast heart rate and elevated cortisol. Over months and years, this creates chronic pain, postural dysfunction, and increased physical fatigue. As your heart rate slows and parasympathetic tone dominates, motor neuron firing to skeletal muscle decreases, allowing overactive muscle fibers to fully relax, releasing accumulated physical tension that most people have grown accustomed to ignoring as a normal part of daily life. What makes this full-body cascade so remarkable is its universality across different demographics and interaction scenarios. Many people assume only dog or cat interaction produces these heart rate benefits, but controlled physiological testing reveals that any calm, warm, soft-bodied companion animal triggers the same core mechanism. Petting rabbits, guinea pigs, birds with soft plumage, and even gentle fish handling interactions produce measurable heart rate reduction and hormonal reset, because the trigger is the universal biological signal of safe, living tactile contact, not a specific species bond. That said, there are measurable differences in effect magnitude based on interaction quality and duration, debunking the common myth that any casual pet touch delivers equal benefit. Brief, fast, distracted petting, quick strokes, while scrolling a phone or working, fails to sustain consistent C-tactile afferent firing, produces minimal vagal activation, and generates almost no lasting heart rate or hormonal change. The biologically effective interaction requires slow, rhythmic, focused tactile contact lasting a minimum of 2 continuous minutes. This is the threshold where neural signals become strong enough to override baseline sympathetic arousal, shift cortisol and oxytocin balance, and lock in a stabilized cardiac rhythm. Age further modulates these physiological effects in ways that modern medical research has only recently quantified. Younger individuals with flexible nervous systems experience rapid heart rate stabilization during pet interaction, but the effects fade relatively quickly without consistent daily practice. Older adults, whose nervous systems have lost adaptive flexibility from decades of chronic stress, elevated baseline heart rate, and reduced vagal tone, experience slower initial cardiac shifts but far longer-lasting residual benefits. For adults over 50, a single 1-0-minute calm pet interaction can sustain optimized heart rate variability and reduce stress hormone levels for up to 6 hours post-interaction, creating a sustained window of cardiovascular protection that counteracts age-related cardiac decline. We also observe consistent differences between anxious and non-anxious populations. Individuals with clinical anxiety disorders who live with chronically elevated resting heart rate, erratic cardiac rhythm, and hyperactive sympathetic nervous systems show the most dramatic physiological improvements from animal touch. Studies of anxious patient cohorts show average heart rate reductions of 14 to 18 beats per minute during sustained pet interaction, alongside significant normalization of erratic heart rate variability patterns. This is not a psychological placebo effect. Electrocardiogram readings confirm the cardiac changes are objective, measurable, and consistent across blinded trials where participants are not instructed to relax or modify their behavior in any way. All of these layered physiological changes converge to create a state of systemic physiological coherence, a term in psychophysiology describing perfect alignment between cardiac rhythm, hormonal balance, respiratory function, and neural tone. This state of coherence is extremely difficult to achieve through deliberate human effort. Most people cannot voluntarily lower their resting heart rate, reduce cortisol, and synchronize their cardiorespiratory systems through willpower alone. Yet the simple, passive act of petting a calm animal triggers this state automatically, through hardwired biological pathways evolved specifically to restore human physiological balance. This is the hidden macroscopic power behind the small daily act of interacting with pets. It is not merely a moment of emotional joy or comfort. It is a full-system biological reset that corrects the core physiological dysfunction of modern life. The perpetually overactive stress system and the elevated, erratic heart rate that comes with it. Every rhythmic stroke of an animal's fur ripples through your entire body, recalibrating your hormones, your blood vessels, your breathing, your muscles, and your long-term cardiovascular health in a continuous, unbroken chain of biological repair. If these automatic heart rate corrections feel like a surprising, almost magical biological superpower, we have to ask one fundamental evolutionary question. Why does the human body carry a hardwired mechanism that calms cardiac rhythm, specifically in response to animal touch? This is not a random biological quirk. No human sensory system evolves a dedicated, high-precision neural pathway for trivial or incidental stimuli. The C-tactile afferent response to animal fur, the vagal activation that slows heart rate, the oxytocin-cortisol hormonal flip, all of these coordinated systems are the product of hundreds of thousands of years of human evolutionary adaptation, forged in an era where human survival depended entirely on symbiotic coexistence with animals. Modern humans view pets as companions, luxuries, or household additions. Evolution views human-animal proximity as a core survival variable. For 99% of human evolutionary history, our species lived in nomadic tribes, hunter-gatherer communities, and early agricultural settlements where animals were constant, inseparable parts of the human environment. Wild animal encounters dictated threat and safety, resource abundance and starvation, danger and survival. Over tens of thousands of generations, the human nervous system evolved a simple, life-preserving heuristic. The presence of a calm, relaxed, non-predatory animal signals a low-threat environment. If soft-bodied mammals and birds are calm, foraging, resting, and unalarmed, there are no predators nearby, no immediate environmental danger, no urgent survival pressure demanding fight or flight arousal. This is the evolutionary origin of our pet-triggered heart rate reduction. Your brain and cardiac system do not register animal touch as cute or comforting. They register it as safety data. A calm animal is a biological threat detector, a living environmental sensor that your nervous system has evolved to trust implicitly. When you pet a relaxed cat or dog, their steady breathing, soft muscle tone, and passive stillness feed your brain continuous real-time evidence of environmental safety. Your elevated resting heart rate, which exists primarily as a defensive survival adaptation, has no biological reason to persist in the presence of that verified safety signal, and it drops accordingly. This evolutionary framework explains why animal touch outperforms every human-made relaxation tool for cardiac regulation. Meditation, breathing exercises, and mindfulness are conscious, top-down attempts to convince your brain you are safe. Animal interaction is a subconscious, bottom-up biological signal that proves you are safe. Your nervous system prioritizes evolutionary hardwired sensory proof over voluntary mental effort every single time, which is why a 5-minute petting session can reset your heart rate faster and more reliably than deliberate relaxation practice. What makes this adaptation tragically relevant today is the total reversal of our ancestral environmental conditions. Modern human life is uniquely abnormal in the history of our species. We live in constant artificial safety, yet exist in perpetual psychological stress. Our ancestral nervous systems evolved to elevate heart rate during genuine threat and lower it during verified environmental safety. Today, we have eliminated almost all physical survival threats, yet we flood our lives with artificial, chronic stressors, work pressure, social comparison, digital overstimulation, financial anxiety, endless notifications that our ancient neural systems cannot distinguish from physical danger. The result is an evolutionary mismatch disorder specific to the modern cardiovascular system. Our bodies produce threat-level elevated heart rates 24 hours a day, despite living in zero physical danger. We exist in a permanent state of defensive cardiac arousal with no outlet for fight or flight and no natural environmental safety signals to reset the system. Wild ancestral humans were surrounded by safety cues: wind in foliage, calm animal activity, consistent natural rhythms, quiet nights, unrushed days. Modern humans are surrounded by artificial stimulation, constant noise, visual clutter, and isolated indoor environments stripped of natural safety signals. This is why resting heart rate has steadily risen across all human age groups over the past century, and why cardiovascular disease has become the leading cause of global mortality. Companion animals fill this evolutionary void perfectly. They are the only consistent, living, natural safety cue remaining in the modern built environment. Every time you interact with your pet, you reintroduce an ancestral biological signal. Your nervous system desperately needs to regulate cardiac rhythm. You are not just bonding with a companion, you are providing your brain and heart with the evolutionary calibration modern life intentionally removes. To turn this evolutionary science into actionable daily health, we must dismantle the widespread misconceptions that render most pet interactions ineffective for heart rate regulation. The first and most damaging myth is that passive proximity delivers the same benefits as active touch. Simply living with a pet, sharing a room with a sleeping animal, or watching your pet move around the house produces almost zero measurable heart rate reduction and no meaningful hormonal shift. Visual observation does not activate C-tactile afferents. The cardiac reset mechanism is tactile, not visual. Your nervous system requires direct, physical, skin-to-fur contact to generate the safety signal that slows heart rate. Passive cohabitation provides emotional joy but almost no physiological cardiovascular benefit. The second critical misconception is that fast, distracted petting works. As we touched on earlier, C-tactile afferents only fire optimally at a specific slow rhythm. Quick, rapid strokes, restless petting, or 1-second touches while scrolling your phone fail to sustain the continuous neural activation required to override sympathetic stress tone. For heart rate regulation, speed and consistency matter far more than duration. 2 minutes of slow, deliberate, uninterrupted petting at 5 centimeters per second produces a larger cardiac reset than 20 minutes of distracted, sporadic touching. Clinical behavioral physiology has defined the exact optimal interaction parameters for maximum heart rate benefit, data that remains almost entirely unknown to the general public. The ideal practice is continuous, rhythmic, soft stroking of your pet's back, shoulders, or head for a minimum of 3 to 5 consecutive minutes in a quiet, low-stimulation environment with full focused attention. This specific protocol reliably lowers resting heart rate by 10 to 15 beats per minute, increases heart rate variability by 20 to 30%, and sustains reduced cortisol levels for 4 to 6 hours post-interaction. Timing further amplifies the cardiac benefits in ways that align with your body's natural circadian rhythm. Morning pet interaction within 1 hour of waking resets your baseline heart rate for the entire day, preventing the gradual stress-induced cardiac elevation that builds from morning work and digital exposure. Evening pet interaction 1 hour before sleep lowers sympathetic tone, reduces resting heart rate, and boosts residual oxytocin levels to improve sleep quality, eliminating the racing heartbeat and mental restlessness that delay deep sleep for millions of adults. We also must address the nuanced difference between stressed pets and calm pets, a detail that completely changes the physiological outcome of interaction. A fearful, agitated, overstimulated pet cannot produce the safety signal your nervous system needs. Petting a stressed animal creates conflicting sensory data. Your tactile system detects soft fur, but your subconscious brain picks up the pet's elevated heart rate, tense muscle tone, and anxious movement. This conflicting signal eliminates heart rate benefits and can even slightly increase your own stress response. Only calm, relaxed, resting pets provide the consistent low-threat biological feedback required for cardiac regulation. This explains why shelter animal therapy programs require extensive animal temperament screening. Only calm, steady, low-reactivity animals qualify for clinical heart rate regulation therapy because their physiological state directly dictates the human physiological response. It is not the pet's presence that heals. It is the pet's calm physiology regulating yours. For individuals who do not own pets, the same evolutionary mechanism applies to temporary, intentional animal interaction. Controlled studies on animal-assisted therapy demonstrate that structured weekly sessions with calm companion animals produce sustained long-term reductions in average resting heart rate, lower baseline blood pressure, and improve long-term cardiac resilience in people with no permanent pet ownership. Even short, intentional interactions with friends' pets, community therapy animals, or gentle strays deliver measurable acute cardiac benefits, proving the mechanism is universal and accessible to everyone, not just pet owners. When we scale this individual physiological effect to population health, we uncover a profound public health pattern hidden in global epidemiological data. Long-term population studies, tracking over 200,000 adults across 12 countries, confirm that consistent daily companion animal interaction correlates with a 26% lower risk of developing persistent tachycardia, a 32% lower risk of stress-induced hypertension, and a 15% lower overall cardiovascular mortality rate. These statistics remain significant even after controlling for diet, exercise, income, age, and pre-existing health conditions, confirming that the heart rate regulation from animal touch is an independent, standalone protective health factor. What makes these findings so compelling is their simplicity. No expensive equipment, no rigorous workout routine, no restrictive diet, no pharmaceutical intervention is required. The human cardiovascular system evolved a free, natural, accessible repair mechanism activated by one of the most gentle and pleasurable acts human beings can experience. In a world where we spend billions on cardiac health supplements, fitness programs, and stress relief tools, we overlook the ancient evolutionary tool sitting right in our homes, the rhythmic, calming touch of a companion animal. We can now close the full causal loop we have unpacked across this entire breakdown. Modern chronic stress creates persistent sympathetic arousal, elevating your resting heart rate, destabilizing cardiac rhythm, raising cortisol, and eroding cardiovascular health over time. This state is evolutionarily mismatched to our safe modern environment, a biological glitch with no built-in human self-correction mechanism. Intentional, slow, gentle pet interaction activates specialized tactile neural pathways, triggers vagal parasympathetic dominance, lowers and stabilizes heart rate, resets hormonal balance, restores cardiorespiratory coherence, and delivers the ancestral safety calibration your body craves. This is not emotion. This is evolution. This is neurophysiology. This is the invisible, life-protecting science unfolding beat by beat every single time you pet an animal. The takeaway is not that pets make you happy, though they do. The deeper, more critical truth is that pets regulate you. They regulate your heart rate, stabilize your nervous system, reverse chronic stress physiology, and restore your body to the balanced, resilient state human evolution designed for optimal health. In a world that constantly pushes your cardiovascular system into overdrive, your pet provides the only consistent, natural, automatic reset button your body has ever known.